As I mentioned earlier, this is our third Sunday of our worship series, Pillars of Faith. Pillars of Faith, reflecting on how we live out our faith and how we could all become better at doing that. Past two Sundays, we went over the book of the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 11, going down the list of the big names of the Bible, both the success stories and of the failure, of whom yet were commended by their perseverance in faith regardless. And today we heard the story about Jesus healing a crippled woman for 18 years. 18 years. Perhaps our minds are already reflecting on her faith and on her courage to come before the Lord, even when it meant it was against the law and the norm to do that. And there's the synagogue leader, the one who is set already in our minds as the bad guy, the evil figure. In our just minds, we are full speed judgmental already. How could you do this to this poor woman? That's inhumane. But there's the synagogue leader who sensed a full-on red alert. He knew what the scripture taught about the Sabbath day. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 8 through 11 says, "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy." That's Exodus chapter 20. And in that same book, Exodus chapter 31, verses 14 and 15, it says, it emphasizes how important it is to keep the Sabbath day. It says, "Observe the Sabbath because it is holy to you. Anyone who desecrates it is to be put to death." Those who do any work on that day must be cut off from their people. For 6 days' work is to be done, but the seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day is to be put to death. If anyone else, the synagogue leader, felt like he is the one to protect the tradition and the law that was passed on from their ancients. He felt the established peace was being stirred up by this Jesus guy. He felt the need to set a standard of some sort. There is a saying, probably you heard of it before, you only see what you want to see, right? For the synagogue leader, one of his roles was to lead the diverse opinions and unpredicted situations at the temple. So it wasn't even about what he wanted to see. The more I read this story over and over, it felt like it was about what he could see, regardless of his desire, but because of how he became who he was in that community. And I don't know about you, but for me, if I was in that situation, without knowing the end of this story, how this story turns out to be, and about Jesus and everything, if I was in that situation, I think I would do what the synagogue leader has done. Exactly what he did. There's much higher possibility for me to do that than doing what Jesus did. Just being upfront. No, in fact, I've done it so many times already. That's not acceptable here. That's not allowed in this building. That's against our policy. With all the good intentions, I feel like I had to be tough and say those words. And I was the synagogue leader of the story. I was the synagogue leader to our own children sometimes. I was the synagogue leader to those who came to our church. I was the synagogue leader when I thought about the diverse political issues. And we might ask, don't we need some kind of a standard? We can't leave it free for all and have everyone do whatever they feel like doing. A few weeks ago, I heard a comment from someone I knew from the community that got me thinking. And the comment was said, ironically, in a relatively friendly, welcoming, and jokingly way, in that high, bright tone. The comment was, looking at me, "Here comes an illegal immigrant," in a jokingly way. Processing a little later, at that moment, I think I didn't know what to feel about that whole comment. I knew the person well enough that there were no bad intentions. There were no bad intentions. And I learned that they were talking about the immigration policies that's been controversial lately. But there's some set of learned knowledge in the history and the culture of this land that connected that label of illegal immigrant to someone who is an immigrant like me. Now, I'm privileged. I'm very privileged enough to not be offended by such comment. But the thought that kept bothering me was that this is another example of insensitiveness, of a privilege against the underprivileged of the society. By race, by gender roles, by age, by the degree of education that you have, by your past records, by your occupation, by your documentation, with whatever just excuses we may have. The danger is that insensitiveness. In our story about Jesus healing the crippled woman on a Sabbath day, the issue of legality may make us insensitive about a precious individual. A girl who may once was loved in a loving family. One day felt a little awkward on her back. Everyone tried to help, but no one could fix it. People prayed for her, and then a year went by. Her back was a little bit worse. People still remembered her, kept her in prayer, did a donation drive for her, for medical bills. And then another year went by. Third year, and then the fourth year. And then after 18 years, she, a crippled one in a corner of the street, became the norm of everybody's life. She was no longer a patient, but a distraction in the beautiful view of society. Year by year, she became invisible. Her opinions didn't matter much more to anybody. But Jesus saw her. Not just saw her, but he puts his hands on her. She was healed, not just physically, but socially. Let's go back to the dilemma we have today. Don't we need some kind of standard? We can't leave it free for all and have everyone do whatever they feel like doing. Yes, we need a standard. We need order in life. But it's not a question about law, but it is a question about love. As Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. As we heard about earlier, we had a great Vacation Bible School week. And it was a great week of learning from the children. On our first day, one of the children asked me a question. Who put this VBS together? And since it was only the first day, I couldn't figure out the intention behind this question. Is this child not happy about something? Or is this child going to criticize something we've done? Is there a problem with the curriculum? Did one of our volunteers do something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Talk about lack of confidence. I need to pray more. Anyhow, with suspicion, I try to formulate an answer for that question. So I was like, I don't know, all the adult teachers, I guess, who are here today, put this VBS together as a teamwork. And as soon as I barely got out my uncertainty out, the child commented with the brightest and energetic smile, "Thank you so much for putting this together. Thank you so much for putting this together." And that proved all my thoughts wrong immediately. If there's one thing that today's scripture teaches all of us, is that we are not the absolute standard. We are not the absolute standard. Doing faith requires undoing. Doing faith requires undoing of our perspectives, the lenses we look at the world. Doing faith requires boldly accepting that I'm not the standard. And that is almost impossibly hard without God's help. It's almost impossibly hard without prayer life. But when we dismantle all the expectations and go against the standards deeply within us, ourselves, and in our society, with the genuine hope of healing, to be healed, reaching out towards Christ, who came into our neighborhood, who came into our life, who came to our church. I have faith that Jesus will see that child in us. I have faith that Jesus will see that immigrant in us. I have faith that Jesus will see that neglected and invisible in us, putting his hands on each one of us so that we will all experience that healing through love. And for that amazing saving grace, we give thanks to God today and every day. Amen.